Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. It's a grim grey day here today, so the lights are on, I'm afraid, which does alter things slightly under the camera, but we'll cope. There are a few bits and bobs I want to get done today, so I just thought I'd switch the camera on and invite you along for that ride. I don't know that any of it will get as far as being finished projects, but yeah, I'm here to have a few minutes of fun with some bits and bobs. I'm going to be creating some ephemera. I've got some cash envelopes, the kind you can get in the dollar store, and you get a huge pack for usually $1 or £1, depending on where you are, €1 even. And they're really great if you're giving cash or gift vouchers or anything of that sort. They're just a really useful thing to have around, a little bit more decorated than this. So I'm going to be doing that, and I also thought I'd like to get a little bit of layered stamping onto some of these tags here. I think the birch ones are probably going to wait for January because they're not specifically Christmas or festive holiday looks, so they can be winter and January. But I did want to get some tree lines and things onto these starry ones. So shall I start there? Yes, let's start there, because then I can let that snow dry, ready for the stamping, whilst I do something else. So I'm just going to get my craft mat out, silicone craft mat as always. This is the Wow Premium Embossing craft mat, but the Reindeer silicone craft mats are brilliant. And basically any surface that is water resistant and heat resistant will do the job for you. So I'm going to pop that down, clear some of these decks and get going. Back in a sec. Great, so let's start with these. If you missed the backgrounds episode, I'll pop that link in the description down below. These are done, of course, on my usual manila tags. No use asking me where I get them. The craft store where I used to buy them in bulk has sadly closed down. It was a UK online craft store. And yeah, as soon as my box runs out, I'm going to be looking for a new supplier as well. But these are manila tags, so in order to be snowy, I just want to whiten the base of this a bit. I'm going to do it with a mixture of PaperArtsy fresco snowflake paint and some gesso, just because that gives me, it ekes out my fresco paint a bit further. I need just something to get that out with. Just a little spatula onto there, and I'm using a natural sponge to sponge it on, just because a natural sponge will give you really quite nice texture compared to an artificial sponge. So I'm just going to mix that up on there, and then just straight onto here, getting myself some snowy sort of surface down over the bit of tag that didn't get nighttime. And I'm not sort of terribly bothered about how beautiful or smooth the top of my hills or landscape looks. It's all part of the delight, and in any case my aim is to be stamping some trees around here, so it's all gonna slightly vanish in the long run anyway. There we are. So there's quite a lot of paint in the sponge now. I've got most of it off there, so I don't mind that sort of warm glow in the sky. That's fine by me, but as I say, I just want a slightly snowier look on the landscape. Don't quite like that peak in the middle there, so I'm just going to flatten that out a bit with some snow coming up this side, and it'll all make sense when it's got some more trees on it. But yeah, out in the forests, the sky comes right down to the horizon. That's how it works. All those drawings we do when we're little, and there's a stripe of blue sky up here and a stripe of ground down here and nothing in the middle. No. The sky comes all the way down to the land, and the land goes all the way up to the sky. There we go. So those can go and dry, because I'm going to do some stamping on those. I'm going to clean off the sponge so that the paint doesn't dry on it, wipe off the mat again, and I'll be back to do some ephemera, I think, probably next. I thought actually there were some other things I want to have drying while I'm doing different things, so I'm going to grab the gesso back. So I'm going to do these in various ways. I've got some little bits of design paper I might use. I'm definitely going to be using some of the ephemera, but some of these I just want a sort of a rough artsy look on. So I'm just going to give them a really, really rough brush of gesso, because I just love that as a sort of simple way to change the look of these. And you can do it front and back, or you can just do it on front. And if these are going to sit under the Christmas tree, then the back of them won't be seen anyway until the person gets it to open it, and at that point they'll be more interested in what's inside it, I should think. Don't know how many I'll do. Shall I do maybe 3 of these like so, or maybe a quartet of gesso-y ones. So this is just the cheapest of craft paint brushes. It in fact comes from a certain Swedish furniture store. In the kids section you get a pack of, I think it's either 5 or 6, and they're great. They come in round and flat, and so they're just brilliant for cheap crafting purposes. No need for an expensive set of craft brushes. I buy a pack pretty much every time I'm there, so that even if I mess them up and get them all scraggy. Good, so 4 of those, that's fine. They can be drying. These ones I'm probably going to add paper to. We could do that right now. Got this nice sheet of music paper. Can't remember. Anne-Marie, a UK craft company who have all sorts of lovely natural materials and papers and things. And this was from a Christmas based one. And I want it not quite the size of the envelope, so I want to leave a little. I could do measuring. Should we do measuring? Generally I cannot be bothered with measuring. I'll just rip to approximate size. See, it's an annoying number. They're 7 by, if I take off the folded flap, 10.5. Yeah. See, I'm just gonna eyeball it. That's my preferred method. I'm gonna go, it's about that. Get my big scissors so I can just cut. I'm gonna go for a slight margin there, and because I'm gonna roughen this in the long run anyway, in fact I could go right along there and I could probably cut a number from this. So that's gonna go like that. So again, I'm cutting for a border. There you go, that's perfectly acceptable. There's another one along there, perfectly acceptable. And another one, just trim the edge of that. In fact, I might leave the worn edge because I quite like, well, we'll take off that bit. That's a useful bit of paper. I want to leave on the treble clef because I do love a treble clef. And we'll take off that bit. There we go, so that's 3 of those. Should we make it 4 of those? Or should we leave this? That piece of paper is quite useful as it is, so we'll leave that like that, and we'll make that 3 of those. And then to give these a bit more interest, I'm just going to take a scissor blade. There are tools you can do this with, kind of edging tools, but I'm just going to take a scissor to them and rough up those edges for a bit more texture, because as you know, I do love a bit of texture. So that'll be something like that. Do be careful, don't cut your fingers off. She said casually, but I'm gonna trust you to be grown-ups about it. There we go. And yeah, kind of the rougher the better, really. I like all those little rips and tears. If you rip right across the piece of paper, that's going to be slightly more problematic, but given we're going to glue things on top of this anyway, I shouldn't overly worry about it. So that's a little bit of music paper, one here. And you know, I may not be giving this many gift vouchers this Christmas, but then I'll have these in store, gift vouchers, cash, whatever it might be, just something to zhuzh up a gift which can otherwise be just a little bit boring. This is the bit where you're putting in the thought and the love to those convenient gifts. There we go. Lots of nice little bits of paper here that I'm also going to clean up. I'm going to just glue these down wipe up my scraps of paper and I'll be back. Right, envelopes are drying, tags are drying. I'm going to make a little bit of ephemera. So anybody who's seen me collaging tags or art journal books will know that I go through packets of these tiny labels very, very quickly. So I was delighted when they brought out the stamp set that is basically these labels, but you can stamp them as many times as you need them on whatever colour paper you need them. So I'm going to stamp them both on some, this is another piece of that paper from the same pad as the music paper. I could put a link down below, but given it's not available anymore, it seems fairly pointless. You know, any design paper you've got hanging around or old book pages or anything like that. So cracking open these, in fact, they will all come out individually, so they are cut around. But what's going to be quite convenient is not to cut them yet, but just to stamp them direct to here. And then I'll have a whole page of deliciously pale green ephemera labels ready to go, which I can then cut out. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp in a combination of colours, as I often do. I think I'm going to combine, what is this, watering can with some black archival. I'm just inking them up by rubbing to start with, which just kind of gives them a coating to get going. This says it's archival jet black. It's actually not. I re-inked it with the Distress Black Soot re-inker, so it's actually Distress Black Soot archival formulation. So a few of the Distress colours have come out as archival formulation so that they are waterproof, which is great. But that's the Hickory smoke, the grey going on like so, and I'm just making sure I've got good coverage all over. And then what I'm going to do is, in fact, I might do some brown as well. I have got here, this is the same thing. This was an empty ink pad, so custom blend, uninked ink pad onto which I've put the ground Espresso Distress archival formulation. So I'm kind of dotting that around in places so that some of these have got a bit of that going on. And then I'm going to do the same, kind of working at a slight angle with just putting some black on. And as I say, it's the black soot rather than, and it's just going to mean that they're not all perfect, which is, as you may realize, pleasing to me. So this won't necessarily be a perfect stamping because they're not on a really hard grid block, but they are still on their own plastic sheeting, so I should be able to get a decent stamping of most of them. And if some of them are a bit faded or worn or weathered, that's all to the good, really, isn't it? The one thing I do need to make sure is that it doesn't slide as I'm doing this, or it doesn't jump up and go down again a second time, because then I'll have blurred or double vision kind of ones. I'm hoping. I mean, the paper is quite full on, so this is going to be a subtle stamping, I guess. I'm going to do some more on plain paper in a minute. But there we go. Really nice little labels, all in a kind of Christmassy green. And yeah, I'm going to enjoy cutting those out and having lots of green labels to use. I shall also be making some turquoise ones, because the ones I go through fastest are the blue and the turquoise and the green. Obviously I use the neutrals all the time, but the packs have a lot of neutrals in, whereas they have fewer of the blues and the greens, so that's great. And then the other stamping I'm going to do with them is on some, got some fairly smooth watercolour paper here. It's again out of the pad that I like to use, Goldline Watercolour Studio. It's a basic watercolour paper, it's nothing expensive. And what I want is, now shall I start with, well, I've got these here now, but what I want to give this is just a little bit of, let's say, distress ink weathering. So there's a bit of pumice stone and maybe a little bit of old paper distress inks, just smooshed onto the mat, a little bit of water. Might even add just a little bit of frayed burlap. That'll give a bit more colour to it. And maybe a little bit of the hickory smoke again, because that's a nice cool grey that just alters things a bit. So I've just got kind of nice watery ink on there. I'm gonna just loosen those droplets a bit, and then I'm just going to go down to pick up some smooshing. So I'm just creating a kind of aged paper is all this is, just weathered and aged, kind of splotchy. Dry that a little. Just because if I just keep dropping down into it, it's always just going to blend as opposed to layering. If you want to keep a layer, you need to dry that layer, and then that will stay put. But I'm letting those droplets run, that's fine. I want sort of weathered, aged paper. I don't want protection here. And if it feels a bit much in places, you can always dab it back with the paper towel. I might do that, or I might just go back in for a second go. Just pick up a little bit more texture and a little bit more detail in places. So again, I'm going to let that dry over in a corner and maybe flatten it under some books, and then I'm going to stamp those stamps down onto it again, so that I've got just that sort of look of aged paper. While that's on the board, let's just make sure we're using it up. I might, let's see, no, go on. I've just given that another little dry off camera so that I can come back and just make the most of what's there on the mat. Right, you go over there and dry. And I could use that onto the gesso surfaces. Okay, we could put a bit onto the music paper background just to, yeah, give a little extra inkiness to those. Let's wipe that up. And then the other thing, the other ephemera I want to do, I'm going to do with some watercolour paints. I might do a little bit with these labels with these as well, and it's specifically two colours that I found are really wonderful for this kind of ephemera. So the grey titanium here, these are Daniel Smith watercolours. Grey titanium and buff titanium are the two colours I'm going to use for this. So again, I'm going to get another sheet of that same watercolour paper out of the pad. And for this, I'm actually going to stamp some larger ephemera. I'm going to stamp that before I do the inky old paper backgrounds. So the stamps I'm going to use for that, it's getting busier around on the craft table here, just trying to keep track of things. The stamps I'm going to use for that are some of my little PaperArtsy Festive minis, which are just little tiny. They're perfect for ATCs, they're perfect for little gift tags, and they came out last year. So there are a couple of carols in the bleak midwinter, the holly and the ivy, and then these sketches that I created of little winter motifs. There's a pine cone, mistletoe, holly, cinnamon sticks and orange slices, star anise, and a little pine tree, each with their own little ephemera background. And I have trimmed round these, so you can absolutely use these elements by themselves, but they do make rather lovely little bits of ephemera, and it's as simple as stamping them and then painting over the top, which is a really meditative process I discovered last year that I very much enjoyed. I'm going to stamp these, I think, should I stamp them in black or in brown? I could do a bit of both, couldn't I, so that you can see. So I think we'll take potting soil, which is a sort of neutralish sort of brown. It's a dull greyish brown, which is quite nice for vintage printing. So this is going onto slightly textured paper, remember, so the stamping won't necessarily be absolutely pristine. but I quite enjoy that. Beautiful, subtle little fir tree with a Christmas carol behind it. And then I'll do one in, should I do one in black as well? Let's do one in black as well, just so that we've got one of each. So these definitely have to be in Archival because of what I'm going to do to them next. So it needs to be Archival stamping. Oh, I didn't stamp that very well. I didn't press down in the middle, but we're making vintage ephemera, so if the stamping is not perfect, what's to worry? I'm not going to do all of these. I want the pine cone for sure. And I think I want the mistletoe for sure. So let's go with the same pairing. I'm going to do a black one. Make sure I get down into the middle. Now you see, again, I didn't ink it up enough, but it's good enough for vintage ephemera. And again, as I say, this is partly because I'm stamping. If I stamp onto some plain white paper, you'll see the difference in a second. Let me just show you, just for the sake of argument. So when people are saying, oh, but I can't get a good stamping, change something. So change the paper you're using, change the formulation, put a bit more ink. I'm going to get a piece of smooth paper. Must be a piece of smooth paper here somewhere. Yeah, I know where there's one. So this is actually the PaperArtsy smoothie paper, which is the paper they would recommend for stamping onto, as opposed to textured watercolour paper, which is not the way to get a good image if you're stamping anything, but particularly stamps as detailed as these. And yeah, just take a look at the difference between those two. But this is what I want at the moment. I want textured watercolour paper. Now I've got a beautiful stamping of the pine cone to use later. Excellent. I might do another of these black ones because I think that was just me not putting enough ink on. It may be that this ink pad needs re-inking and may need to put some more onto it. So let's do a black one down here. Press properly this time. There we go. So it was, see the difference if you don't quite put enough ink on and if you really do the job properly. And then what's the other one I thought I wanted? Just giving these a quick wipe with the paper towel. It won't affect the stamp if you just leave a bit of archival ink on it. It won't affect how beautifully it stamps next time around. I think I want the winter's tail. So this winter's tail background exists as a larger stamp as well, but I just thought it was beautiful as a background for the mistletoe. So a proper inking up and a proper pressing down. So I'll leave links to these minis down below so that you can track them down near you. PaperArtsy do have stockists worldwide. You need to check out the PaperArtsy stockist list, which if you Google PaperArtsy stockist list should come up, I think. Oh, actually, let's put it down here because then I can save this bit of paper and do some stamping of those labels. Let's pop that there. So that's the stamping in black. That's quite nice. I very rarely stamp in black, as you may have gathered, but every now and then it's a nice thing to do. Maybe we will have a little. Let's do in the Bliss Midwinter because I love it. It's probably my favourite Christmas carol. Words by Christina Rossetti. And there are a couple of settings. The traditional one is set by the composer Gustav Holst, but my favourite setting is by a composer called Howard Dark. Dark with an E. Dark with an extra E. And it's just the most haunting, most beautiful. I wobbled doing that. There's a slight blur on those words. Can't be helped. And I'll live with it. Unless my eyesight is going. There we go. Lovely. So what I'm going to do with these is get some of these ink pads out of the way because I can't see what I'm doing. I'm a fairly orderly crafter. I like to be able to see what's on the desk in front of me. Not all the time, and certainly there are occasions when I'm going hell for leather, and yeah, the craftermath, the aftermath of the craftermath is a sight to behold. But when I can, I like to keep on top of things. So the two colours, as I said, that I want to use are the buff titanium, which is here, and the grey titanium, which is here. So I'm just going to give each of those a little spritz to wake them up, because it's water that wakes up watercolour. And then in a very simple way, it's getting a little bit of this colour, and I might even mix some up just on the craft mat here. This is why having a craft mat is a lovely thing, because it means you can use it as a palette if you haven't got a palette hanging around. And this is as simple as just taking this, and I'm going to create a little label of old paper around this, and then drop in a little bit of the grey and just let it dry so that those edges become like a sheet of vintage paper. A fairly straight line, doesn't have to be completely, but I'm just going to let the colour gather at the edges in little splotches. A little bit more water just to give it movement on the page. Good. Next one I'm going to do mostly the grey. Over here. So as you can see, it's a really soft meditative process, just allowing the paint to go down onto the paper. Create those straightish lines to create the look of a piece of paper that you've maybe, I don't know, torn out of a book. Gone slightly wonky there, doesn't matter, I can straighten it up with another line. And if I want a little bit more sort of definition or vintageness, I can do just a little watery splat, splat, splat. You know the way it goes. Let's do one that's a bit more just buff titanium this time. Let's take that through the middle here. So that's a warmer affair altogether. I'm just going to use water in the middle so that that paint pools at the edges. So you can see why you have to stamp in Archival. If I stamped these in Distress or in any other water reactive ink, there's no way I could paint over the top of them like this. Simply wouldn't be an option. I'm going to get some more of my grey titanium and go down here. So I'm just kind of creating these vintage pages. It's like a full-size book page, if you like, in miniature. And these will work as ephemera, as little card toppers, as an element within a journal page, anything you like. See, I enjoy this so much, I've even stopped talking. That's like an old page out of a music book, just with, and that is actually in the bleak midwinter behind. Scan from an old music book of mine. And again, just a little bit of splatting to give a little bit of extra texture to those book pages. If you splat while it's still quite wet, it'll blend in and give you a very loose effect. If you spat once it's a bit drier, you'll get nice droplets that will keep their integrity and be droplets. I do love that mistletoe stamp. It's with the winter's tale. It's a good combination. Am I off camera now? Down at the bottom here. Remember, watercolours will always dry paler than they are when they go on. So this effect will become a little more subtle as they dry. Not that I wanted a lot more subtle. What I really didn't want to do was sit the paper in the paint up there. I'm going to rotate so that I can get round to In the Bleak Midwinter. So it's sort of like I've created 9 book pages on here. Ooh, nice hefty dose of paint there, so I'll just allow some water to let it spread out. Both of these are beautiful granulating colours, particularly the grey titanium has a gorgeous granulation in it, which means you get a beautiful texture in the paint, which sort of does the job of being old paper without you having to do very much at all. And then one last little one here. Ooh, nearly joined up. Well, it doesn't matter, does it? If I wanted a white board around them, then fine. Or I can trim direct to my old paper. It depends what I'm going to use them for. I might want the illusion of them really being on old paper, in which case I don't want to cut with a white border. Or I might want to give them a sort of white border that gives you the knowledge of the paint that's there. So I'm just going to put a bit of extra tint down the edges of some of these so that you get that lovely sense of the page maybe having been torn out of a book down that side. These are a bit drier, so it will have a different impact as I put on a little bit of extra down that side. Let's get a little bit of grey going down there and maybe across the top. So some simple little bits of vintage ephemera there. And then what I'm going to do over here with the paint that I've got left, well, I might take a bit more. These pans are ones that I have filled myself from tubes, so the grey titanium needs topping up, as you can see. I'm going to create a little bit of extra vintage paper down this side here. Need some more water. Onto which I'm going to stamp those Tim Holtz labels again. So it'll be an extra bunch of neutral ones. I need a thicker brush actually. I'm just going to do water. With watercolour, the general rule is you want to use as thick a brush as you can for any given space. So there's no point trying to fill a space like this with a fine brush. You want a nice broad wash of a brush just to get the water to there, and then you can put in your pigment and it'll just move beautifully within the water that's on the paper. And again, I'm just looking to get a kind of vintage aged paper look, so I'm going to put some spatter and just let that spread out. And this again I'm going to allow to dry, maybe while we do some stamping on the tags. Bit of tree stamping, bit of old paper spatter, like it's mildewed and rotting in a damp library. There you go, that's the effect you're after. Very good. So what I won't do with my nice watercolour brushes is leave them standing in the jar so that they go splat at the bottom. That's not the way to treat a watercolour brush. There we go. So I'm going to let that dry, more drying time, and then stamp some labels onto that. And as you can see, it's just a really subtle little old paper ephemera. Good, you go over there and dry. What else is drying? Oh, the other old paper for the other labels. Good. So I'm going to put these watercolour paints away and get out some tree stamps for my tags. Lovely, having fun, which is the point after all. Back in a sec. Great, so the tree stamps I want to use on these come from a couple of Tim Holtz sets. There are these beautiful tall pines that come in a large version on Reindeer Flight and in a smaller version on Mini Holidays. Again, links to these, not links, but the names of these will be in the description below, and then you need to Google for local stockists of them. And I might use these gorgeous scraggly ones that are off a more recent set, The Great Outdoors. But this is really sort of about the layering up. So one of the reasons I like having these in two sizes is obviously it gives me the chance to create some depth. because smaller equals further away. So these are going to be in the background. And another way to get the illusion of things being further away is if in the background they are paler and then they are more prominent as you come forwards. So this lost shadow, I'm using Oxides rather than inks at the moment, just to see, because I don't stamp in Oxide very often and I want to play. I want to have some fun and explore. So Lost Shadow is a really, really pale colour. Yeah, too pale to work. Well, they're right on the horizon, those ones, and that's okay. I don't want quite so much tree going on down here. And the joy of Oxides and Distress inks is if you don't like them, you can use some water and get rid of them. I quite like that shadow effect up on the hills. However, right in the distance, as it's drying, you can sort of see it a little more. So I am going to do that some more. I'm not going to ink up the whole stamp though, because what I really want is that to be almost subliminal in the background. So I'm just going to ink up the top parts of the trees, and I'm going to do another little stamping of those a little further down. So just a layer in the background. Let's get you. And here we're going to go in the middle there with those little double stamping. Again, I don't really want that all down there, so I'm just going to get rid of that down in the snow because I want other trees in the foreground. I can't even tell whether those are showing up on camera, but in real life they're giving me a beautiful subtle kind of background layer of trees, not over that dark bit of sky. That hasn't worked, so I'll stick to them on this side. So it's trying it out. If it doesn't work, as you see, you can really get rid of most of it if you don't want it. Remember, the background here is Distress ink, so that will get disrupted if you spray water onto that background, as we know from our spritzing and flicking. Doing a slightly softer stamping of that one. Put a little spritz of water on there. No, still don't want it down here. Okay, so it's a really subtle, long way in the distance. Quite like another one of those, actually. Really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Almost tempted to stop at that, actually, on that one, and decide what's going to be down here. No, I am going to put some in the foreground as well, and I'm going to stick to the little one for now. I'm going to go Hickory Smoke, and I'm still not going to do the whole of the tall pine trunks. I'm going to come a little further into the foreground with some of this Hickory Smoke. This again is the Oxide. I'm sticking to Oxides today, just to see what's different. If you've been following the Christmas tags unboxing episodes, then you'll have seen these trees in action, mostly stamped in Distress ink, because that is what I tend to use. Okay, so I don't know if you can see how that gives us a foreground stamping and a background stamping, because the Hickory Smoke is a darker colour. Again, there's a bit too much going on right down here in the front, because I want other things happening. Oh, look how beautiful that is. So I'm just going to lose a little bit of that down here because I don't want it. So spritz of water, little bit of paper towel, and I've knocked those trees back into a more distant tree line. Do I want them here as well? Yes, I think I probably do. So Hickory Smoke again. And what I love about this Hickory Smoke is it's a really soft purpley kind of a grey, which is great with our background here. I'm not going to want that. I just want that, and maybe some on the other side. Kind of there. And again, too much going on down below. Let's lose those. So I've now got quite a damp piece of paper towel, and that's doing a nice job as well, just cleaning those bottom bits. this one is the one that's working best for me at the moment in terms of distance and depth. Okay, one last little go with Hickory Smoke down here, because I have it. I thought I was going to do 3 different tags, but as it's turned out, my love of working in triplicate has taken over. Put those there, and I think we'll have some kind of slightly more centrally. And then over to this side. Yep. Okay, good. Let's lose that bit down there. Lose that bit right in the middle. So the comparison between working with water-based inks and non-water-based inks, I hope, is becoming clear to you. So the decision now is, what colour do we go right in the foreground with? Going to do some larger ones coming right up from the bottom. So lose the small, come in with some that are going to be in the foreground from the larger side. And I'm kind of tempted to go chipped sapphire. It's the colour that I've got out here. Or I could go, well, see, we could go Hickory Smoke again, just because they're larger. I am really enjoying the sort of greys and purples of this. Let's do Hickory Smoke with chipped sapphire, adding some extra colour, and that I am going to spritz a bit to allow that oxide to mix on there. I'm going to test that on a different piece of paper just to see what I've got, because I think it might be too watery. Well, now in terms of colour, is that not perfect for what we've got going on in the sky? Okay, let's give it another, let's see if we can get that to work. So Hickory Smoke, la la la, and then some bits of chipped sapphire. That is partly because we've got, of course, chipped sapphire in the sky, along with, I think it was Villainous Potion and stuff, was it? So it's not going to be exactly the same as you've got there. It's never going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go right down in the foreground here. Oh, that's just a mess, look. Too wet a stamping. So rethink, relook, re-go, and instead of spritzing it this time, I'm going to go with whatever happens if I just stamp. So that's a light little bit of Distress Oxide going on there. Maybe if I spritz from further away so it's a lighter spritz. Let's go like so. Yeah, again, it's not ideal. I've got a big drip of paint right in the middle there, which we'll get rid of. Maybe we should go with... I'm just going to wipe it all away again. And we're back to snow. Look at that. Oh, maybe what we'll do is we'll be a bit bolder about going with a proper dark stamping. Let's take, instead of the Oxides, I'm going to go with this Archival Cobalt Blue. Give myself some trees in the foreground. Different kind of effect. Not happy with that. Can't get rid of that because it's archival. Gonna put something over the top of it. Look, here you go. Sorted snowflake. So what I might do is revert to having some of these little ones coming down a little further, or, haha, Hickory Smoke. Just coming down into the foreground like so. That's a subtler kind of a tree. Bringing this down into the front. So archival, even archival ink will wipe off here if you give it a bit of elbow grease. So we've now decided there's going to be something going on there. It could be a piece of ephemera. I'm loving these here. I'm going to keep that. So that was just stamping direct onto paper. Loving the misty look of these. It's because there's so much going on in the background here already that it's already lovely. I actually don't want that there. See, you can just change your mind. It's a great thing. I can't, as I say, change my mind about the archival. Well, oh look, I can make it a bit softer. That's partly because it's going over paint, so it doesn't take in quite. Oh, that's quite nice. That's given me nice purple trees. Oh, yeah, I'm not disliking that. But we do need. Where are my little ones gone? Put them away, didn't I? Do need to bring back these ones here because they've kind of vanished into the background. So let's get some hickory smoke back into there, and actually I'm gonna, there we go, just so I can restore my tree lines. Nice. Okay, coming down into the foreground. Good. Well, see, I'm now inclined to just leave these be and find out what's going to go on the front of these. I think it's going to be some simple collaging, maybe just a word stick, maybe some pine cones. I've got a pine cone hanging around. Little pine cones, something like that, that have fallen off the trees. Pine cones falling off the trees. We'll come back to those. I need some time to think about that. But yeah, I'm utterly in love with that lost shadow in the background. Hickory smoke coming into the foreground. So we're down to a pair of those, and something different will happen with this one. So we will have a different one. Grand. Let's come back to our ephemera, finish off the ephemera, and then we'll finally come back to finishing off our little gift tag envelopes. I told you it was bits and bobs today. I'm in one of those get lots done, but not quite to finished kind of a mood. Back in a sec. Right, so I'm back with my aged paper, and I'm going to do some more stamping with these amazing labels, and I'm going to go coffee, black and grey in a fairly random way all the way across them. Try and get them well inked up because, as I say, again, I'm going on to watercolour paper, which is A, highly absorbent of ink, and B, slightly textured, so we want to make sure we're well inked. I put all my inks away. That was unhelpful. Here's the black, so just some little bits of black going around, just to get some variation, and the watering can grey, maybe a little bit of coffee going on for a vintage look. So the joy with this is you're going to be able to really tone to whatever project you've got going on. This one is not quite going to fit, maybe. I'm going to get most of them. Which side do I want to lose? What I can do, I'm cunning, is maybe get a little bit on there. No, it won't be the whole label, so let's not worry about it. Let's just pop that down, like so. And again, the stamping of this won't be as effective as if I had them on proper acrylic grid blocks. I mean, I could try pressing down with, I'm just a bit worried it'll jump up and back down again, or slide around, which you don't want when you're getting a stamping. But, oh, there we go. Lovely vintage brown ones. Enjoying that a lot. So let's take the next lot into more of a black, so that we've got a variation, and we've got labels that will do some of each. So this time I'm going on to the distress inked background. Let's ink up the whole lot again. Very much in love with these labels. What I would like is to get myself a little round hole punch, because cutting out the round ones is not so much fun. There we go. Nice black version. Let's stamp that down onto there. Now this one is going down on slightly bendy paper because it was damp and I haven't put it under books to dry it. But I'm just trying to get to each of those stamps with a little bit of finger pressure. There we go. Yeah, not a perfect stamping, but it's fine. It's giving me lots of lovely little labels to just play with. I think we will go, you can see it's still got a little bit of the brown going on there, which is grand. Gives it a slightly vintage black look. Soot black is a very full-on black, but you can see there are places where I didn't manage to get finger pressure and they haven't got quite such clean stamping. I guess again, for fairness sake, we should stamp some of these onto the absolutely plain paper so that you can see how sharp a stamping that is by comparison with going onto watercolour paper. So again, trying to get, and as I say, these do all come out as individual stamps, so you don't have to do this slightly nerve-wracking trying to get all of them in one go. But that's given me a lot of labels to play with. But let's just, so you can see, let's do a little corner of them onto this smoothie paper, and you'll see you get a very different kind of affair in terms of precision and detail. Let's not go over the top of our pine cone. Yeah, so just compare there and there. That's the corner we've done. So onto completely smooth paper, you're going to get a very different kind of affair. But this vintage kind of look is absolutely fine for me. For various projects, for other projects, I would want to be able to read every last word, in which case you want to go down onto smoother paper. Grand. So I'm probably not going to cut these up on camera because that would be really dull. The larger your blade of scissors, on some of these, Tim was explaining, they have put the same size all in one row. So instead of having to cut each one individually, you can go for a whole row in one. And it will be the right height to cut all of those along one line. Simple as that. And obviously the longer the scissor blade, the further you can go in one cut. And again, with these, on these labels, you can see some of them have little outlines around them, some of them you want to go straight right to the stamped outline, some of them you want to leave a little bit, and that's going to be up to you. That's going to be the joy of having these ephemera. So I will cut all these later, but let me just give you a little look at the vintage book pages now that they've dried, and you can see how that colour just kind of spreads across the page and gives you a brilliant vintagey aged look. So as I say, you can either cut so that you've got a little outline around it so that you can see all those beautiful edges, like so, and you've got a kind of appreciation of that watercolour paint that's going on in the background, which I really like. I really like that. Or on this one, for instance, I'm going to cut right into colour. It's going to need me to cut again down that side, so that the whole thing is losing some of that granulation, but it's fine. Just like a vintage piece of vintage ephemera. And with that one, yeah, just trim just a little further down there. Depending again on what you want it for. On that one, I would almost certainly do a little bit of inking around the edge to give you that additional bit of vintage photo aging. That just happens to be what's on the blending sponge. Whereas that one, it would make less sense to do that. It would highlight, well, let's have a look. Let's do it with the darker one, walnut stain. So again, I'm pulling backwards from the page rather than drawing the ink onto it here, because I do want to leave that white outline. But it's just giving me a little bit of focusing of the eye. Both of those are good options. Both of those are good options. Excellent. Yeah, and of course these, same thing. If you cut an individual label quite close to its outline, Then what you might want to do is a little bit of inking according to the colour of your project, which will just give it an extra bit of vintage detailing. Okay, it's time to make some gift envelopes. I'm going to cut up some of these because I might want some of this ephemera for those envelopes, up to you. I don't mind how you pronounce it. And yeah, I'll be back in a sec. And we're ready for a bit more playing. A few minutes of cutting and I've got plenty to be going on with. I've got some from the green paper that we stamped as well, and as you can see, hundreds more that I can play with in the future. I've got some little bits of design tape and washi tape. A couple of them are Tim Holtz, a couple of them are just ones I picked up cheaply somewhere else. I've got my 4 gessoed envelopes. I've got my 3 music paper envelopes. I'm just going to move those a little bit out of the way. I've got my bits of stamped ephemera. I've got a couple of stamps that I think I might want to use in the background. So for instance, I'm quite enjoying this little one here. This is my favourite snow stamp. But I think what I'm going to start with is just putting some subtle greenery. I don't think I want full-on kind of green, or do I? Decisions. I should make these decisions before I switch the camera on, shouldn't I? Let's go rustic wilderness oxide. Oh no, maybe we want to stick to archival just in case things get wet. So let's go with good old olive archival. Always a standard for me, and it will give us a lovely mid-green. Yeah, perfect. So I just want a little bit of this giving me detail on these gesso-y ones. And the joy of a fir sprig is it can come in from any direction, hanging upwards, hanging downwards, pointing upwards, every which direction. Simple little stamp, just reused on all of them. So you don't need hundreds of stamps. I know I've got hundreds of stamps. But you don't need hundreds of stamps to make really effective creations. It means you've got more play flexibility the more you've got. See, just something simple like that. And you can see already that that's going to tone in with some of those green labels in rather a nice way. Do I want someone here as well? Let's wait and see. And then the sort of thought I had with the design tape was to make a sort of parcel crisscross. That one I think is too thick, so I think we're going to go with these little tiny skinny ones. I mean, they're really skinny, but I think they might work quite nicely. They've got a little bit of sparkle on them as well. No idea where I got them from, possibly one of the evil sites like Temu, or I may just have picked them up at some point in some craft fair somewhere. So I'm just going to go across the middle, trim. In fact, it could go around the edges, couldn't it? No, it's not hurting anybody. As though it's a present. Oh, that seems to have ripped, so it's about the right width to go like that. And I've lost the end again. So this is going to be 20 minutes of you watching me try to find the end of my tape. There it is. And I really wanted one, so I'm going to pull gently this time. Do I want it going all the way up onto the flap? Let's say yes for now. Just so it's got that kind of look of a present. And for the moment, I'm not worrying about decorating the backs. If you want to decorate the backs of yours as well, by all means go ahead. I'm not going to do that on this occasion. I have decorated the backs of things. Let's do one without it going all the way up to the top to see which we prefer. It's another good way, another good reason for working in multiples is that you can choose to do something differently the next time around. See, I quite like it both ways. I don't mind. But when this is folded over to seal the envelope, there's really no need to have any on the back. So I fold it along the crease. There we go. Yeah, it makes, so now it's looking like a sort of little window. That's fine. I'm thinking maybe this one gets one of those just across there, and then it might get a little bit of die-cut greenery to go with it, something like that. On these, I'm definitely thinking die-cut greenery, little sprigs like so. And what else have we got in here? Maybe a little sprig like so. And of course, I've got loads of, these are the pre-cut die cuts that I did all that cutting with a while back. Little snowflake. And then also just some of these little labels. It would be a nice little addition. Let's have a green one over here. You stay there. That's my sleeve for the first time ever, getting in the way. Let's have one of these, maybe on here. Oh yes, see, look, right in the middle there. Just going to ink that so it shows up a little better. Cutting these circular ones, it really is a question of keep the paper still, keep the scissors still, move the paper, move the paper. Quite enjoying that. Maybe one of these without a ribbon on could have something like the winter's tale. It's covering up that greenery quite a lot. Is there a smaller one? Mistletoe smaller. Oh, Christmas carol, look. Maybe down there, maybe down there. That covers up less of the branch, so that one's going to go there. In fact, we could trim it smaller and then it'll cover up even less of the branch. So you have options. You always have options. If something is covering up a precious background that you're enjoying, get the scissors out. Just trimming away, put a little bit of new edging on it. Let's pop that down there. Good, enjoying that. I do like them with the ribbons on. I think that's quite good. Maybe we'll add ribbon to these other ones as well. Got a different colour ribbon here, slightly paler, so if I can find the end of that, I might go for that over here. No, I can't find the end. Oh, there it is. Here's where it helps if you have fingernails, which I fairly rarely do. Gardening and crafting are not compatible with fingernails. Posh fingernails. And well done. Well, that can go part way then, and I'll get some more to go the rest of the way. I don't know if you saw that. Was that off camera that ripped? It's very fragile tape. I mean, it's so narrow. You can see how narrow it is. So I'm not surprised that it's not quite as sturdy as you might want it to be. You see, that's quite pretty. I'm enjoying that. Now I'll do one more. So that's a slightly paler colour of tape. And those little sparkles are nice, aren't they? It's the one time of year when a bit of sparkle really can do a lot on a dark winter's day to bring a little light. Across the middle, trim, trim. So I am just playing now. I don't know what I want to do next. I don't know how much I want to do. I'm having fun, which to me is also what this part of Christmas should be about. Getting things ready for people, creating things that you hope are going to give other people pleasure. Also wants to be fun for yourself. Really, really. Because otherwise, what are we doing here? I'm going to trim this one a bit smaller as well, just because I can. Because again, those words don't need as much space around them. So I'm going to cut quite close to the words. And that way I'll have a smaller vintage label. I've still got that lovely vintage effect. I could take Christina Rossetti off there. I could just have the words of the carol. Yeah, sorry Christina. Off you go. And then again, just a bit of new edging for that. So that that's just covering up a bit less of that little parcel. Grand. What have we got here? Let's have another label in the middle of here, shall we? Maybe a green one. Let's have a green label. Doesn't mean it can't have a brown edging. green label. Now you see, I'm starting to see that what I want is at least 2 labels for each of these. And it's layering up these labels, which is why I go through them so quickly. That's how it happens. As soon as I put one on, I want more. So I think those stamps are going to be a good investment in terms of, and yes, see, what we can also have is a nice little one there, and a nice little one or 2 over there. Let's get one of these little white ones, a little bit of inking. Yes, and then over here, I'm not liking that snowflake, so that can go away. Over here, I think I want tape again, but I'm just going to tape right to the music, as opposed to going all the way to the edge of the envelope. Yeah, so I'm just getting the bit between my teeth now in terms of what I'm enjoying and what I'm not enjoying. I'm starting to understand what it is I want from these, and then what that has given me the illusion of is the illusion of a little gift on there. Where's my dark one? Let's go with the dark on these 2. So across the middle there, trim and down. A little bit left over from before. Trim, trim. Yes. See, I'm getting happy now, can you tell? Let's pop that little bit of greenery back on. Let's pop that little bit of greenery back on. And these are going to get labels as well, of course they are. They're parcels, of course they need labels. Do we like the light one or the dark one? I like them both. I think we'll go light. Except I don't know where I've put the light. Is that one? Up and down. Ooh, little extra bit there. That's like the bit you've tied at the top. I'm not going to take that away because I like the randomness of it. A random little bit of extra ribbon that's tied around the top. So, and your bit of greenery. So because I've got the stamped greenery on these and now the labels, I'm less bothered about having actual greenery on those. I'm quite enjoying the simplicity of that, whereas on these I do want a bit more kind of presence in terms of those little sprigs of greenery. So let's go square and oblong. So big square and little square. And what else have we got here? I'm going to need to cut another in a minute if I'm not careful. Let's go with you. Oh, or a little round one there. Look, what about that one? There we are. Yeah, those are quite enjoyable, aren't they? So there's some sticking down to be done. I'm sort of thinking I'd quite like another stamping. So again, it's about looking, seeing what you're enjoying, and adding more of the thing you're enjoying. I'm enjoying this greenery against the craft. I think that's really pretty, so I'm putting some more of it on, and the fact that it's going over the ribbon rather than the under the ribbon now is not an issue for me. I'm very much fine with that. I'm going to put another one so that you can see it up here. Let's just move you out of the way so you don't get stamped on. There we go, and maybe one more just coming up from the bottom here. Good. Now there's some gluing to be done, so I'm going to glue those. But while I'm doing that, I did also, while I was grabbing things that were drying, have a little thought about these trees that I loved that I stamped. And this little corner of this one, which has disappointed me a little bit because I can't quite get the layering to work right. And I just wondered what would happen. So I'm going to experiment right here, right now, with what would happen if I cut myself a little rectangular panel. It's already not quite rectangular, is it? of trees to go in this corner. Yeah, I'm going to see what happens. In fact, let's do a loose fussy cut. Kind of just randomly, vaguely echoing the shape of those trees. The other two tags I think I'll finish maybe in next week's session. There's clearly going to be another before Christmas. And I'm not quite done with the other tags. So maybe we'll let those be something that gets finished off next time around. Going to go down in between, just with a little wiggle. Just doing a little sort of shaping wiggle to give a bit more detail, but it's not, I'm not really being precise to what's there in the stamp. But I was just really enjoying this test stamping that I did on the other piece of paper. I'm thinking, well, I want to put that into action. That's a bit too tall. Let's trim you off. I want this involved because it's good. That lovely misty oxide look. So I'm not sure about cutting up in between these trunks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it on the tag first, just to see how I'm feeling about that now. I think that's pretty cool. Still got a little bit of that background stuff going on. So it might be about the positioning. It might be about getting it higher up. Might be about getting it lower down. I think that's rather good. For now, I'm going to say that's where it goes, because then I'm getting two bits of tree either side of it there. And I'm going to take the risk and trim to the bottom of the tag and glue that down before I can change my mind. Let's glue it down before I change my mind. Right, so I'm going to go and do some gluing of these. And then I think that might be our lot for today. There are things to finish off next time around, but we've had more than a few minutes of fun again, because there's just been so much going on at the craft table. That's what it wanted. And there'll be something else to go in the foreground of there as well, and we'll discover what goes in the foregrounds of those on the next time around. But I'm going to glue these down, so do come back for a little close-up of everything we've achieved so far today. Thank you so much for your company. Do leave comments and questions down below. As always, I'll try to leave as much detail in the description below as I can of the things we've been playing with. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would love to have your company on this creative journey. Thank you so much for watching, and happy crafting all.